Block that farmer's loan, block his purchase, block his future. We are not letting another cowboy hobbyist near our view.
Meredith Ballinger said it into a microphone at the Sage Meadows Ranch Estates HOA meeting, one hand on a Pinot Grigio, while her husband Graham filmed the vote on his phone. 140 residents raised their hands, unanimous. They sent the objection that night to the county commission, the state ag loan board, and the water court, wrapped, in my case, around a red sandstone rock and thrown over my gate. My daughter June, age 11, was the one who picked up the rock on her morning ride. Meredith thought she was stopping a hobby cowboy from buying 1,000 acres next to her view. She didn't know my great-great-grandfather had appropriated this valley's water in 1887, priority number 14. And she didn't know the pipe that delivered water to her subdivision ran right under my back pasture. What would you have done? Where are you watching from tonight? My name is Asa Crane. I'm 49 years old. I ranch in the San Luis Valley of southern Colorado, and I'm the 5th Crane to run cattle on the same 980 acres my great-great-grandfather, Eben Crane, homesteaded in 1882. We raise Black Angus and grow alfalfa. We drink our coffee black, and, as of this spring, I was 3 weeks away from signing papers to buy the neighboring 1,000-acre Callaway Ranch from the widow who had run it for 51 years. The San Luis Valley is high desert, 8,000 feet, thin, dry air, sage and pinyon in every direction. The Sangre de Cristo Mountains stand over us in the east, like a wall of purple bone. The Rio Grande runs through us, north to south, and a small braided tributary called Willow Creek runs through our land, feeding the alfalfa of 3 generations of cranes, and, further down, the lawns of a subdivision of 220 beige stucco houses, called Sage Meadows Ranch Estates. The valley has always fought over water. My great-grandfather, Milton Crane, co-founded the Willow Creek Mutual Water Company in 1923 with 4 other farmers and 3 Hispanic acequia particiantes, so that the valley could share water fairly under one set of bylaws. The Crane family has held a majority block of shares in that company ever since. I inherited the shares from my father in 2004, along with a certified copy of a handwritten Colorado water appropriation, dated April 1887, that designates the Crane family as priority number 14 on the Willow Creek tributary, which, for a state that runs on first in time, first in right, is senior as the hills. I also have a JD in water law from the University of Denver, which nobody in the valley knows about because I never hung the diploma on a wall. My wife Della teaches 4th grade at Conejos Elementary. She bakes bread on Sundays and reads poetry out loud to our 2 daughters at bedtime in a voice that cuts the worst day in half. Our older girl, Elowen, is 17, just accepted to Colorado State for agricultural science. Our younger girl, June, is 11, horse-obsessed, wants to be a large animal veterinarian, and has been riding across our back pasture in the blue dawn every morning since she was 4. And then there was my older brother Jude. Jude was 16 when I was 14. We were stacking hay on the upper terrace one August afternoon in 1991. A slip chain on a pivot irrigator came loose. He went under. He died on the way to the hospital in Alamosa. I inherited the ranch alone. I was not ready. Jude's godfather was a rancher named Edgar Callaway, a quiet, pipe-smoking man who owned the 1,000-acre spread next door. Edgar died 7 years ago. His widow, Adelaide Callaway, had been running the ranch alone ever since. She was 78, tough as cottonwood, and on a March morning this spring, sitting at her kitchen table with her hands around a cup of black coffee, she offered me the Callaway Ranch for $4.2 million. "Asa," she said, "I want it farmed. I don't want another subdivision. My husband used to say that man on your hay wagon grew up to be the right one. I trust him. Sign papers Tuesday." I walked back to my truck in the April sun with my eyes burning. The Sage Meadows Ranch Estates HOA held its quarterly meeting the following Thursday. I was home that night, reading June a book about a pony named Penny. Elowen was at the dining room table, doing a calculus problem. Della was at the stove, stirring green chili stew. We did not know what Meredith Ballinger had just proposed, what 140 of her neighbors had just voted for, or what was about to land against my gate wrapped around a rock. I found the rock the next morning because June was with me. She had saddled Miss Penny at first light and ridden down to the gate to open it for the feed delivery. She came trotting back with her hands on the reins, a bandana pulled up over her nose against the dust, carrying something under her arm. "Dad, somebody threw this at our gate." It was a red sandstone, about the size of a grapefruit. Rubber banded around it was a cream-colored envelope with a Sage Meadows Ranch Estates logo. Inside was a single printed page. Formal notice of HOA resolution number 2026-04-12. The Sage Meadows Ranch Estates Homeowners Association, by unanimous vote of its general membership, hereby registers its formal opposition to the proposed agricultural expansion by Crane Family Farms via purchase of the Callaway Ranch. The association has filed objections with the Conejos County Board of Commissioners, the Colorado State Agricultural Loan Board, and Division III Colorado Water Court. The association intends to present public testimony at the May 2nd Commissioners' hearing. Signed, Meredith Ballinger, President. June was watching my face. "Dad, what does that mean?" "It means some of the neighbors would rather we didn't buy the Callaway place, honey." "Why?" "Because they think they know the valley better than the valley knows them." I made her a grilled cheese. I walked out to the shop. I called Adelaide Callaway first, then my attorney in Alamosa, Constance Oberlin, and finally my father's old friend Don Teofilo Vigil, a 78-year-old acequia commissioner from the Hispanic Irrigators Association that my great-grandfather had helped charter 103 years ago. Adelaide was quiet. "Asa, I got a visit from that woman yesterday at my door. She brought a pie. I did not let her in. I told her Tuesday is still Tuesday." "Thank you, Adelaide." Connie Oberlin, from her office on Main Street in Alamosa. "Asa, I'll be at the commissioner's hearing with you on May 2nd. Don't say anything public between now and then. Document every call. Save the rock." Don Teofilo, in his slow, careful voice. "Mijo, the valley knows you. Say what you need to say at the hearing. The acequias will stand behind you." I saved the rock on a shelf in my shop, behind a ball jar of 16-penny nails. I took a photograph of it first, with a measuring tape next to it for scale, because my grandfather had taught me that evidence is only evidence when you can document it. On May 2nd, I drove to the county commissioner's chamber in La Jara in my good boots and my father's denim jacket. Della came with me. Elowen came with me. Connie Oberlin met us at the door. The chamber was full. The Sage Meadows HOA had mobilized. Meredith Ballinger sat in the front row in a cream linen blazer with a silver buckle at her throat. Her husband Graham beside her in a charcoal suit. 22 of their residents fanned out in matching lavender polo shirts they had clearly had printed that morning. Behind them, a scattering of valley ranchers in work jackets. Behind them, a row of acequia parciantes in older, darker jackets, their hats in their laps. Don Teofilo sat in the third row, straight as a fence post, and nodded once when he saw me. Chairwoman Hazel Rutledge called the hearing to order. Meredith spoke first. She stood at the podium in her blazer and told the commissioners, with practiced concern, that Crane Family Farms proposed an industrial factory feedlot operation on the Callaway Ranch that would pollute the valley's water and ruin property values for Sage Meadows residents. She referenced hobby ranchers who inherit without understanding. She called me a hobby cowboy on the record 3 times, and her HOA residents laughed each time. Chairwoman Rutledge glanced at me. "Mr. Crane, your response." I stood. I did not raise my voice. "Madam Chair, my family has raised cattle on this valley for 144 years. My plan for the Callaway Ranch is the same plan my family has kept on this land since 1882. Cow-calf rotation on native grass, alfalfa on the irrigated quarter, no confined feeding operations, in compliance with the Colorado Department of Agriculture's Best Practices certification, which I have held for 23 consecutive years. I am happy to answer any question Mrs. Ballinger has about what I actually intend to do." I sat down. Meredith did not have a question. What she had, 3 days later, was a hit piece in the Valley Courier-Advocate, headlined, "Water Concerns Rise as Controversial Ranch Deal Looms," written by a freelance stringer with no byline history in the Valley. And she had the news, by that Friday afternoon, that the State Agricultural Loan Board had placed my loan into a 30-day community opposition review. I stood in my kitchen reading the letter. Della put her hand on the back of my neck. "Asa," she said quietly, "are you going to fight?" "No," I said. "I'm going to remember." Meredith's next move was organized. She was not a stupid woman. She was, in her own way, efficient. She launched the Valley Lifestyle Protection Coalition over the following weekend. She designed a logo, mountains over a wine glass, and printed letterhead at the UPS store in Alamosa. She wrote a 2-page template letter opposing the Callaway sale, and by the following Tuesday, 140 of her HOA residents had mailed signed copies to the county commission, the state AG board, the water court, and Colorado's federal congressional delegation. One of those letters was hand-delivered to my mailbox with the signed signature conspicuously absent. The coalition also made a video. Meredith stood in front of her stucco clubhouse in her cream blazer and explained that a controversial industrial ranching proposal threatened the valley's air, water, and children. She used the phrase factory feedlot 4 times in 90 seconds. The video accumulated 11,000 views on Facebook within 3 days, most of them from outside the valley. The comments called me, in order of frequency, a polluter, a land grabber, and a cowboy. That same Tuesday evening, Adelaide Callaway called me. Her voice was not the voice I was used to. It was thinner. Asa. She came to my door again, the Ballinger woman, with 2 of her board members. They stood on my porch for 20 minutes. They told me you had lied to me about your intentions. They told me their group could offer $4.5 million, cash, no inspection period, to keep my ranch, quote, as pastoral open space for the community. Adelaide, are you all right? I am very tired, Asa. I am very tired, and I am not selling to them. But I would like Edgar to come home tonight, please, because I cannot stand this kind of talk. I drove over. I sat on her porch with her for an hour. I did not speak. She did not cry, but she did hold my hand for a long stretch while we watched the sandhill cranes move across the top of the upper pasture in the blue late afternoon light. Before I left, she said, Asa, on Tuesday morning, 9 o'clock, bring your lawyer. I will sign. 2 nights later, June came home from Conejos Elementary with red eyes. Dad. Yeah, Junie. Landon said at recess I was the daughter of the polluter. I crouched in the hallway, so we were eye to eye. Della was in the doorway behind her. What did you say back to him? I said our creek has been clean for 140 years, and his dad wouldn't know a water rights appropriation if it hit him in the face. Della and I looked at each other. A grin got loose on Della's face before she could shut it down. Who taught you to say that, bud? Elowen. Elowen, in the kitchen pouring orange juice, did not deny it. Later that evening, I walked out to the barn with my father's old flashlight. I climbed the ladder to the loft. In the back corner, under a tarp, was a wooden trunk my grandfather had labeled in black grease pencil, water. I had not opened it since 2004. I sat cross-legged on the loft floor and started taking folders out of it. A knowledge nugget worth saving. In most Western states, the foundation water rights that feed modern subdivisions are older than anyone in the subdivision realizes. If you live in Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, Nevada, Utah, New Mexico, or Arizona, your water is delivered under a priority system, and the person who holds the oldest right on the stream is, in the eyes of state water courts, the most important person in the room. My great-great-grandfather had filed for his appropriation on April 6, 1887. The handwritten affidavit was in the trunk, protected in a wax paper envelope, signed under oath in front of a justice of the peace named Arnulfo Chavez. I read it 3 times that night by the light of the barn bulb. Then I walked back to the house, kissed June on the forehead as she slept, and sat down at the kitchen table with Della and a piece of legal paper. I wrote one sentence at the top. What Meredith Ballinger does not know. I filled the rest of the page. Graham Ballinger made his first mistake on a Wednesday. His law firm in Denver, where he had been a senior partner before his early retirement, filed a civil suit in Conejos County Court seeking to enjoin the Callaway sale on grounds of prospective economic tort against the Sage Meadows HOA residents. The theory of the case was that my purchase would diminish their property values to such a degree that I owed their community preemptive damages. The filing was 26 pages long and cited no Colorado case law directly on point. Connie Oberlin read the complaint and laughed, once, quietly, in her office. Asa, this is a paper airplane. I'll file the motion to dismiss today. They'll be out before Memorial Day. I thanked her. I drove home. On the way, at the 4-way stop in La Jara, I pulled up behind a beige Lincoln Continental. The driver was Graham Ballinger. He saw me in his rearview mirror. He smiled. He did not wave. Thursday, someone spray-painted CAFO Go Home in red across the Callaway Ranch's front gate. The paint was still dripping when Adelaide found it. She nearly went down on the gravel. Her hired hand, a 19-year-old from La Jara named Ignacio, helped her to the porch and called me immediately. I drove over. Adelaide was sitting on her front step with her hands clasped in her lap. Her eyes were dry. I had never, in 32 years of knowing her, seen her eyes that flat. Asa, this ranch has never had paint on its gate in 60 years. Not the peace sign during Vietnam. Not a Reagan sticker. Not once. And now this. I'm sorry, Adelaide. Don't be sorry. Be thorough. I was. I photographed. I called the Conejos County Sheriff's Office. I had Ignacio ride the fence line, looking for a can of matching paint, and he found one, tossed in a ditch 300 yards west. Red Rust-Oleum. Same batch number as a 2-pack that, as it happened, had been purchased at the Alamosa Ace Hardware the prior evening at 7:42 p.m., with a credit card belonging to a man named Dale Ballinger, Graham Ballinger's cousin, who lived in Sage Meadows. A knowledge nugget worth pinning. Most hardware stores in rural Colorado now use point-of-sale systems that timestamp every purchase with the card owner's name. If somebody has vandalized property with spray paint, ask the sheriff to subpoena the store's logs. The store will not refuse. The paint is almost always on camera. The sheriff's office opened a case. They did not arrest Dale Ballinger that week, but they did call him in, show him the photograph of the paint can and the register receipt, and invite him to explain himself. Dale Ballinger, for his part, asked for a lawyer and then, on his way out, looked over his shoulder and said, loudly, "Graham told me to." That quote, the deputy later told me, took exactly 2 minutes to reach Connie Oberlin's phone. Saturday afternoon, I ran into Meredith at the co-op in Antonito. She was buying organic goat cheese. I was buying fence staples. She turned in the aisle and smiled the smile of a woman who had already written her memoir in her head. "Mr. Crane, how's the deal coming along?" "Adelaide signs Tuesday, Mrs. Ballinger." She tilted her head. "I wouldn't count on that, Asa. The valley doesn't belong to the Cranes anymore. The valley belongs to the community." "Mrs. Ballinger," I kept my voice level, "I do not want to correct you in a grocery store, but if you are quoting me the ownership of this valley, I would remind you that my family has watered 1,000 acres of it under a priority date from 1887. That is senior to every well, every tap, and every sprinkler in your subdivision." She blinked. I do not think she had understood that sentence. "Have a good afternoon, Mrs. Ballinger." I paid for my fence staples. I walked out. In the parking lot, I sat in my truck for a long minute and stared at the Sangres. The light on the range was the color of burnt honey. A red-tailed hawk turned over the co-op roof, slow circles, the way my grandfather used to say the land watched itself. I started the engine. That night, after June was asleep, I went back out to the barn loft and kept reading. What I found in the water trunk, by the end of that weekend, rearranged my entire problem. I had known, in the abstract, what was in the trunk. I had never laid the pieces side by side. 4 things, in order, told me how this fight was going to end. First, the 1887 appropriation itself. Priority number 14 on the Willow Creek tributary. Under the Colorado Constitution, Article 16, Section 6, water appropriations are permanent property rights, and senior rights take 100% of their decree before junior rights take a drop. Every single tap in Sage Meadows Ranch estates, every sprinkler head on their golf course practice green, every stucco-mounted decorative fountain in Meredith Ballinger's front yard. Junior to me by 129 years. Second, the 1923 Articles of Incorporation of the Willow Creek Mutual Water Company, the small cooperative my great-grandfather Milton Crane had chartered with 3 acequia partiantes and 4 other Anglo farmers to share delivery fairly. The articles specified 1,000 original shares, with voting rights attached 1-to-1. Of those 1,000 shares, Milton Crane had purchased 510, 51%. Those shares had passed intact, from Milton to my grandfather, to my father, to me. I owned majority control of the cooperative that delivered every gallon of water to Sage Meadows Ranch estates. Third, and this was the part that made me set my coffee down, the Mutual Water Company's bylaws, also drafted by my great-grandfather, required majority shareholder consent for any new long-term water delivery contract exceeding 10 years. Sage Meadows' delivery contract had been negotiated in 2016 by the subdivision developer as a 10-year agreement. It was due for renewal in 18 months. Renewal required a shareholder vote, which meant my vote. Fourth, and this was the quiet one, the 1962 pipeline easement across my back pasture. signed between the mutual water company and the developer's predecessor in interest, contained a termination clause. 6 months written notice, terminable by the landowner for cause. The defined list of qualifying causes included verbatim, failure of grantee or grantee's successor to act in good faith toward grantor, filing a false HOA-wide objection to my land purchase on pretextual grounds, with a concealed competing financial interest held by the HOA president's spouse, would almost certainly qualify. Connie Oberlin, when I read her the clause over the phone, exhaled a 3-beat laugh. "Asa, you own them. I know. What do you want to do?" I thought about Adelaide Calloway's flat, dry eyes on her porch step. I thought about June coming home with the word polluter on her chest. I thought about Jude, 16 years old, dead under the chain of an irrigation pivot in 1991. "I want to do this right," I said, not loud. "I want them to know I could have taken their water. And I want them to remember, for the rest of their lives, that I chose not to." Connie was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Asa, that will be harder than taking the water." "I know. That's why it's what we're doing." A takeaway worth writing down. Water law in the American West is the ultimate long game. If you live anywhere the land slopes downhill and the rain falls light, you owe it to your family to know who holds the senior rights on your stream. In most states, that information is free and searchable. The oldest right on the stream is the invisible architecture of everything you see. I closed the trunk. I walked downstairs. Della was at the stove stirring pozole. Without turning around, she said, "You found it, didn't you?" "I found all of it." "Are we going to have a quiet Tuesday?" "We are going to have a signed Tuesday. And then we are going to have a very loud Wednesday 2 weeks after that." She smiled into the steam. Tuesday morning at 9:02 a.m., Adelaide Calloway sat at her kitchen table across from me and signed the purchase agreement for the 1,000-acre Calloway Ranch. Connie Oberlin notarized. Elowin witnessed. Ignacio, the 19-year-old hand, brought out a tray of iced tea and set it down with the careful hands of a boy who understood he was watching something consequential. When Adelaide put down the pen, she reached across the table and took my hand in both of hers. "Asa, Edgar would have wanted you to have it." "Thank you, Adelaide. Run it like you are. Don't let anyone, and I do mean anyone, tell you the valley belongs to them." "No, ma'am." Over the next 14 days, I worked the way my grandfather had taught me to work. I did not raise my voice. I did not go on social media. I did not give a single interview. Connie Oberlin filed the motion to dismiss Graham Ballinger's civil suit. The judge granted it from the bench, with prejudice, and ordered Graham's firm to pay our attorney fees, a technical rarity in Colorado civil practice that I appreciated on a professional level. I filed a formal shareholder notice with the Willow Creek Mutual Water Company, demanding a special shareholders meeting to address the Sage Meadows Ranch Estates delivery contract renewal, scheduled for 30 days out. Under the bylaws, a shareholder controlling more than 10% of voting shares could call a special meeting at will. I controlled 51%. The meeting would happen. I filed a formal 6 months notice to terminate the 1962 pipeline easement, citing the good faith clause and attaching Graham Ballinger's cousin's spray paint receipt as Exhibit A. I did not yet say what I would ultimately do. The clock started. I filed a complaint with the Colorado Real Estate Commission against Graham Ballinger for Graham's undisclosed 15% interest in a Delaware Shell LLC that had submitted a competing all-cash offer on the Calloway Ranch. The conflict, I learned from a public records request through the Colorado Secretary of State's office, had been hidden inside a layered shell structure that had been lazily constructed. One of the shell companies had used Graham's home address in Sage Meadows as its registered agent. I filed a separate complaint with the Colorado Bar Association Office of Attorney Regulation Counsel against Graham for the undisclosed conflict, coupled with the retaliatory civil filing. I filed a formal rebuttal to the State Agricultural Loan Board's Community Opposition Review, attaching Meredith Ballinger's affidavit to the county commission, where she had, under penalty of perjury, certified that she held no personal or immediate family financial interest in any competing bid for the Calloway Ranch, directly alongside the Shell LLC documents showing Graham's 15%. The State Agricultural Loan Board, 36 hours later, lifted the review and approved the loan. A knowledge nugget worth pinning. An affidavit sworn under penalty of perjury, filed with a government agency, is admissible evidence in every courtroom in the United States. If somebody lies on one to hurt you, You do not need to prove intent. You only need to prove the lie. Connie Oberlin filed a companion action in Division III Colorado Water Court, confirming the Crane priority date and formally objecting to any further Sage Meadows claim on Willow Creek water. The water court scheduled our confirmation hearing for the first available date. I spent one long afternoon with Don Teofilo Vigil and the Acequia commissioners at the Grange Hall in Antonito. They listened. They asked 4 questions. At the end, Don Teofilo stood up slowly, pressed his palms flat on the table, and said, "Mijo, we will stand with you. Not because you are Anglo, because Milton Crane stood with our grandfathers in 1923. I drove home under a purple evening. I passed 3 deer at the bend by Cumbres. I thought about how much of what we inherit is invisible until the day we need it. The night before the public commissioner's hearing, I sat at the kitchen table and wrote my prepared statement by hand on a single sheet of ruled paper. Della read it over my shoulder and did not change a word. Then we slept. Meredith Ballinger did not understand what had just happened to her. She understood she was losing something. Losing, specifically, the thread of the story she had been telling herself about her own importance. But she did not understand the water law yet. Nobody was telling her. Her response was to double down on theater. She organized a Valley Lifestyle rally outside my ranch gate for the following Saturday at 10 a.m. She posted invitations on her Facebook page, on Nextdoor, and, inexplicably, in a Denver area country club newsletter. She ordered lavender polo shirts in bulk. She hired a bluegrass trio. She invited a reporter from a Denver television affiliate who, bored on a Saturday, actually drove the 4 hours down. 31 people showed up. 16 of them were her own HOA board members and their spouses. The rest were curious retirees. The bluegrass trio played 3 songs. The reporter, whose name was Kelsey Brennan, interviewed Meredith on camera. Meredith, on camera, referred to me as a dangerous anti-community element. Kelsey raised an eyebrow. After the interview, Kelsey took a short walk down our gravel driveway, which was legally a public county road to the first cattle guard, and knocked on the door of our ranch office, where Della, in a flour-dusted apron, invited her in for coffee. Kelsey's story ran that Sunday night. The headline, "Small Colorado HOA battles 5th-generation rancher, calls him hobby cowboy." The angle, it turned out, was not the angle Meredith had hoped for. Monday morning, Meredith called the Colorado Department of Agriculture and requested a surprise livestock health inspection of Crane Family Farms. Inspector Ren Marquez, who had inspected our operation every year for 11 years, drove out Tuesday, spent 90 minutes walking our pens and lanes, and left with a handshake and a letter of commendation for exemplary herd health management. I framed the letter. It hangs next to my great-grandfather's photograph in the ranch office. Tuesday afternoon, Meredith wrote a letter to Colorado State University in Fort Collins, addressed to the Dean of Agricultural Sciences, alleging that the Crane family does not reflect Colorado agricultural values, and requesting that Elowin's admission be reconsidered. Elowin's admission counselor, a woman named Beatrice Holloway, read the letter, called Elowin directly, read it to her out loud over speakerphone, and then said, "Elowin, this is hilarious. I cannot wait for you to get here in August." Thursday morning, Dale Ballinger, Graham's cousin of spray paint fame, drove his silver Ford F250 past my south pasture at 2:47 a.m. and clipped 4 strands of barbed wire with a pair of Irwin bolt cutters. He did not know about the motion-activated trail camera mounted on a fence post with a solar panel. The camera captured the truck, the plate, Dale's face, and the bolt cutters from 3 angles at HD resolution. Sheriff's deputies were at Dale's front door in Sage Meadows by 9:15. Dale, this time, did not ask for a lawyer right away. He said, and I quote the deputy's sworn report, "Meredith told Graham to tell me to, because the rancher was about to hit us with something big." The deputy asked, "What's something big?" Dale said, "Something about the pipe. The pipe is on his land. She just found out on Wednesday." 2 weeks after I had filed the 6 months termination notice on the 1962 easement, with certified receipts to every HOA board member and a copy to the county recorder, Meredith had apparently just realized that her entire subdivision's water pipeline crossed private property owned by the man she had been calling a hobby cowboy. Connie Oberlin, when I told her, laughed the kind of laugh old lawyers laugh when the other side finally notices the floor is gone. Asa, She is going to come begging by Friday. Connie was off by 48 hours. Meredith Ballinger showed up at my ranch gate in her cream Range Rover at 7:11 p.m. Wednesday. She did not ring the bell. She waited in the driver's seat. June saw her first from the porch and came inside to tell me, "Dad, the loud lady is at our gate. She looks scared." I walked down in my boots and work jacket. I did not open the gate. I stood on my side of it. She rolled down her window. "Mr. Crane, Asa, can we talk?" "Mrs. Ballinger, please send any further communications through my attorney, Constance Oberlin. Have a good evening." I turned around. I walked back up the driveway. I heard her start the Range Rover and back up very slowly. I did not look back. Meredith had one more arrow. It was the wrong arrow. On Friday morning, her attorney, not Graham this time, a separate firm in Colorado Springs, filed a petition with the Colorado Division of Water Resources, asking the state water engineer to declare the Crane 1887 appropriation partially abandoned, on grounds that, during the drought years of 2020 through 2022, the ranch had not used the full volume of its decreed right. It was not a frivolous filing in the technical sense. Colorado does apply a use it or lose it doctrine to water rights. If you stop beneficially using water for a sustained period, a senior right can be reduced or forfeited. Unfortunately for Meredith, beneficial use in Colorado includes, as of a 1973 legislative amendment, in-stream flow maintenance for fish habitat and watershed health. Since 2015, I had been enrolled in a voluntary partnership with the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Department, delivering 30% of my allocated flow during low water years into the tributary for native cutthroat trout habitat. I had stamped, dated, notarized records of every single delivery, every year. I had reports from the state biologist. I had photographs. I had a bronze recognition plaque from the Parks and Wildlife Department that I kept in my office, not on display. A knowledge nugget worth saving. In most Western states, the modern definition of beneficial use in water rights law includes environmental, recreational, and wildlife uses, not just irrigation. If you are a senior water rights holder who has shifted some volume into conservation, document it. You are not abandoning. You are preserving under recognized law. Dr. Amos Kittredge, the state water engineer for Division 3, read Meredith's petition. He reviewed my records. He issued a written denial 48 hours later. The denial, at 11 pages, was not strictly required to be as long as it was. Dr. Kittredge seemed to have enjoyed writing it. The final paragraph used the phrase patently meritless and the phrase apparently retaliatory in the same sentence. By Saturday afternoon, Meredith had understood the math. She showed up at my ranch gate again at dusk. This time she did not stay in the Range Rover. She stepped out in a floral cardigan. She was carrying a manila envelope. "Mr. Crane, Mrs. Ballinger, I'd like to propose a compromise. Please send it in writing too. If you will allow the purchase to proceed," her voice was tight, "and if you will rescind your easement termination notice and vote in favor of our water contract renewal, I will personally ensure the HOA drops every objection. As a gesture of good faith, I would also like to purchase from you a 10-acre parcel of the Callaway Ranch, the Pinon Knoll specifically, which has the best view in the valley, for my dream Tuscan villa, at fair market, of course." I looked at her for a long moment. "Mrs. Ballinger, I want you to remember what you just said. I want you to remember that you asked to carve 10 acres off a ranch you publicly called a pollution risk for a Tuscan villa, 24 hours after your attorney filed a state petition trying to take my family's 1887 water right. Mr. Crane, Have a good evening, Mrs. Ballinger." I turned around. I walked back up the driveway. Inside the house, I pulled out my phone, which had been recording the entire conversation on the discrete app I had started using the week I found out about the paint. I titled the file, Callaway Pinon Knoll Offer. I emailed it to Connie Oberlin. Tuesday evening, Adelaide Callaway signed the amended purchase agreement that attached a permanent agricultural conservation easement to the Callaway Ranch, meaning the land could never, under any future circumstance, be converted to residential development. Elowen witnessed. I did not tell Meredith. Don Teofilo Vigil came by our porch that night with a plate of empanadas his wife had made. He sat on the porch swing and did not say much. He looked at the sangres in the twilight for a long stretch. Then he said, quietly, in Spanish, "El agua recuerda." Water remembers. Sí, Don Teófilo, sí. The final Conejos County Commissioners' hearing was held on a Thursday evening in mid-June. The chamber in La Jara held 120. They had set up 30 more folding chairs along the walls and an overflow tent on the courthouse lawn with speakers. We arrived at 6:53. I wore my father's denim jacket, a pressed white shirt, and the bolo tie my great-grandfather Milton Crane had been given by the first Essequia commissioner in 1923. Della wore a simple green dress. Elowen wore her late grandmother's pearl earrings. June wore her riding boots because June was not going to pretend she was not June. Behind us came Connie Oberlin in a charcoal suit. Behind Connie, Sheriff Byron Teague of Conejos County in dress uniform, because he had watched his own grandfather deliver the eulogy at Jude's funeral in 1991, and, in his own words, wanted to be present when the paint came off. Behind the sheriff, Dr. Amos Kittredge, the state water engineer, carrying a sealed envelope. Behind Dr. Kittredge, Don Teofilo Vigil and 9 Acequia Parchiantes in their Sunday jackets. Behind the Acequia, 11 Conejos Valley ranchers in clean work coats. Behind them, Adelaide Calloway herself, walking without a cane at her own insistence, on the arm of Ignacio. Behind Adelaide, Kelsey Brennan with a cameraman. Behind Kelsey, 4 regional reporters. And behind them all, more than 100 Valley residents who had decided that this was a night their grandchildren should be able to say they had been at. Meredith Ballinger sat at the front table in a cream linen blazer and a face I barely recognized. Graham Ballinger sat beside her. Their new attorney, a tired-looking man from Colorado Springs, sat on her other side, with a folder he had clearly read only once. Chairwoman Hazel Rutledge called the hearing to order. I stood. Connie stood beside me. I read the statement I had written by hand 2 weeks earlier. Madam Chair, my name is Asa Crane. My family has raised cattle in this valley for 144 years. I am here to request that the commissioners dismiss the objection filed by the Sage Meadows Ranch Estates, HOA, to my purchase of the Calloway Ranch, and to acknowledge the following facts for the record. I placed the 9 documents on the podium, one at a time, slowly, as Connie handed them to me. The 1887 appropriation affidavit, the 1923 Willow Creek Mutual Water Company charter and shareholder ledger, the 1962 pipeline easement, with the termination clause highlighted and the 6 months notice already filed 3 weeks previously, the State Agricultural Loan Board's approval letter, the Colorado Division of Water Resources denial of the abandonment petition, the Sheriff's Office report on the gate vandalism, naming Dale Ballinger, Graham Ballinger's 15% interest in the Delaware Shell, LLC, Meredith Ballinger's sworn affidavit from the May 2nd hearing, denying any family financial interest, the recording, transcribed, of Meredith's Piñon Knoll Villa offer. Chairwoman Rutledge went pale, then a slow kind of angry pink. Then I said the thing I had come to say. Madam Chair, the commissioners, I believe, now have a full record. I have not come here to ask for damages. I have not come here to ask for the HOA's dissolution. I have come here to ask for 3 things. 1, that the HOA withdraw its objection to my purchase in full. 2, that it issue a written apology to Mrs. Adelaide Calloway for the harassment inflicted on her at her front door. 3, that it reimburse the legal fees of everyone in the valley it has forced to defend themselves these past 7 weeks. I took a breath. If those 3 things happen, publicly and fully, by the close of business next Friday, I will rescind my easement termination notice, and, at the Willow Creek Mutual Water Company's special meeting, I will vote to renew the Sage Meadows Ranch Estates water delivery contract for another term. If those 3 things do not happen, in 6 months the pipeline comes off my land, and in 18 months the water contract expires without renewal. I will hold the shareholder vote either way. Meredith made a sound. Don Teofilo Vigil rose slowly in the 3rd row and said, in a voice that carried, "The valley remembers who built the head gates, and the valley remembers who drove the trucks of real estate flyers." Chairwoman Rutledge banged her gavel once, softly. Motion to dismiss the Sage Meadows objection with prejudice. All in favor. 5-4. 0 against. The HOA withdrew its objection in full at 9:47 a.m. the following Monday. The written apology to Mrs. Adelaide Calloway arrived at her kitchen table on Wednesday, signed by all 9 board members. Adelaide read it, folded it into quarters, and set it inside the empty cookie tin where she kept her property tax receipts. "Now I can sleep," she said, The legal fees, totaling $182,400, were paid in full by Friday, distributed between Connie Oberlin and the Valley Ranchers and Acequia Parciantes, who had incurred costs during the 7 weeks. Graham Ballinger resigned from active practice with the Colorado Bar. The Shell LLC was dissolved. Dale Ballinger pleaded to misdemeanor vandalism and drew 6 months of trail maintenance for Colorado state parks. Meredith Ballinger did not speak in public again in Conejos County. By Christmas, she and Graham had moved to Sedona, Arizona, leaving their Sage Meadows home to a young Navy family at a modest loss. I did not celebrate. At the Willow Creek Mutual Water Company special meeting, I voted, as I had said I would, to renew the Sage Meadows water contract. The board also approved, unanimously, a restructured contract that included mandatory conservation upgrades for all HOA homes, funded by a gradual assessment, and a 10% water delivery surcharge directed, in perpetuity, into a new Willow Creek Valley Community Trust. The trust funds 3 things: infrastructure grants for the Hispanic Acequia communities that have maintained this valley's headgates for over a century, 4-H scholarships for Valley youth pursuing agricultural and veterinary sciences, and an annual internship at Crane Family Farms and the Callaway Ranch for Colorado State University students. The Callaway Ranch closed on the 21st of June. Adelaide Callaway stood on her porch in a lavender blouse. Connie Oberlin handed her the final check. Elowen handed her a bouquet of June's wildflowers. Adelaide kissed my forehead, the way a widow kisses the boy she last saw at a 4-H fair in 1989. Then she handed me a shoebox. Inside was a stack of photographs Edgar had taken at the county fair between 1987 and 1991. Jude on a horse, me on a horse, Jude laughing at Edgar's pipe. A single photograph, larger than the others, of Jude and me sitting on the tailgate of Edgar's truck the summer before Jude died. Jude's arm around my shoulders, both of us covered in hay dust, both of us laughing at something neither of us would remember. I held that photograph in my hand, and I did not try to keep the water out of my eyes. Adelaide said, "He would have been proud of you, Asa." "Yes, ma'am. Not for the fight, for the way you ended it." In October, we held a community dedication for the new Valley Ag Learning Center, a refurbished barn on the Callaway property, where Valley kids can come year-round to learn cow-calf operations, irrigation law, acequia maintenance, and native seed stewardship. Don Teofilo's grandson, Tomas Vigil, starts as foreman next spring. June named the first new calf Jude. Elowen left for Fort Collins the Monday after the dedication, with her grandmother's pearl earrings in her left ear. If this story has a lesson, it is that the real senior right, in any valley, is the willingness to keep faith with people who do not know yet that you are keeping it. If your grandmother left you a trunk labeled water, open it. And if you have your own HOA story worth telling, leave it in the comments. I read every single one. Subscribe for next week's, where a coastal HOA decides a widow's oyster lease should be community open water, and learns what a certified marine archaeologist can do with a tide chart. I will see you there.
What made Meredith Ballinger lose wasn't Asa Grant's water rights. It was her belief that water in the West was something you bought in a gallon just at the grocery store. She mistook quiet man for weak man. She mistook a denim jacket for a hobby. She mistook a fifth-generation ranch for a real estate opportunity. She never once asked, before she launched a valley-wide campaign against a neighbor, where the water in her own kitchen faucet actually came from. Asa's real advantage wasn't his law degree. It was his restaurants, a man who knew cold that he could turn off the water to 220 homes through instead to keep it on, and to redirect a slice of it into scholarships and assure a head gate for the next 100 years. That is the quiet power people mistake for weakness until it lands on them. If your grandmother left you a trunk in a hayloft, open it this month. Drop your own HOA story in the comments. I read every single one. Subscribe for next week, where coastal HOA decides the window oyster lease is community open water and runs straight into a marine archaeologist with a Thai trust. I will see you there.